Fleet Admiral Krath Zun stood before the massive viewing screen on the bridge of his flagship, the Relentless Dawn. His scaled hands were clasped behind his back as he watched the final ships of his armada slip out of faster-than-light travel and take their positions in the formation. 3,000 warships, the largest fleet the Jothic Empire had ever assembled in its 600-year history. The sight filled him with fierce pride. "All vessels report ready status, Admiral," his second officer announced from her station. Her voice carried the excitement that rippled through the entire command crew. This was history in the making. Krath Zun's eyes swept across the holographic display that showed every ship in his fleet. Battlecruisers that could crack planets, destroyers fast enough to chase down any prey, carriers loaded with thousands of fighter craft, support vessels, troop transports, and supply ships that stretched back for millions of kilometers. It was beautiful. It was unstoppable. 47 species have fallen before the might of our empire, Krath Zun said, his voice booming across the bridge. Today we add the 48th. Today we claim Earth. His crew erupted in cheers and battle cries. They had studied the humans for months. Intelligence reports painted a picture of a species that had barely left their home system. They had a few dozen colonies scattered across nearby stars. Their fleet was small, outdated, and divided. The humans had nothing that could stand against even a fraction of Jothic military power. The tactical officer brought up images of human ships on the main screen. They looked crude and boxy compared to the elegant curves of Jothic design. Some of the bridge crew actually laughed at the sight. Their largest vessel is less than half the size of our standard battle cruiser, the tactical officer reported with obvious contempt. Our weapons will cut through their hulls like they are made of paper. Krath Zun nodded. The humans had been given every chance. 3 weeks ago, the Empire had sent ambassadors with a simple message: surrender your independence and join the Empire as a subject species, or be destroyed. It was the same offer made to every species they encountered. Some accepted and lived. Most refused and died. It made no difference to the Empire. Either way, they expanded. The humans had not even bothered to respond with words. Instead, they sent their answer in the form of action. Typical of a primitive species, Krath Zun thought. They probably did not understand the magnitude of what was coming for them. "Admiral, we are detecting a new contact," the sensor officer suddenly called out. His voice carried a note of confusion. "A single ship has just entered our detection range. 2 million kilometers ahead of the fleet." Krath Zun turned sharply. "A single ship? What type? A scout vessel?" The sensor officer stared at his display, his scaled brow furrowed. "No, sir. It is much larger than that. The signature matches a capital ship class. The designation is reading as TRSC Absolute Zero. It appears to be of human origin." Silence fell across the bridge. Then someone laughed. Then another. Soon the entire command crew was laughing at the absurdity of it. "One ship?" Krath Zun's strategic advisor chuckled. "They send one ship to face 3,000? Are they insane or just stupid?" But Krath Zun was not laughing. Something felt wrong. He had conquered too many species to dismiss anything as simple foolishness. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen shifted to display the space ahead of them. There, floating in the void like it had all the time in the universe, was the human ship. It was big, he had to admit that. Perhaps a kilometer in length, with a strange, blocky design that offended his aesthetic sensibilities. But it was still just one ship. Could it be a decoy? Someone suggested. Perhaps their real fleet is hiding somewhere, waiting to ambush us? "Scan all surrounding space," Krath Zun ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. If there are more ships out there, I want them found." The sensor teams worked frantically for several minutes. Finally, the chief sensor officer shook his head. "Nothing, Admiral. That single human ship is the only contact within 10 million kilometers. We would detect any fleet trying to hide, even with stealth systems." Krath Zun stared at the human vessel. It had positioned itself directly in their path, between the Jothic Armada and Earth. Was this some kind of symbolic gesture, a sacrifice to show their bravery before the inevitable conquest? Or was there something else happening that he did not understand? "What are its weapon signatures?" he asked. The tactical officer worked his console. "Difficult to read, sir. There is significant electromagnetic interference coming from the vessel. Power output is high, but the exact nature of their weapon systems is unclear. However, based on its size and human technology levels, it cannot possibly pose a threat to our fleet." That should have been reassuring. It was not. Open a communication channel, Krathzun commanded. Let me speak to whoever commands that ship. It took a moment for the connection to establish. When it did, the face that appeared on the screen surprised him. It was a human female with dark skin and calm eyes. She wore a crisp uniform with various insignias that meant nothing to Krathzun. Her expression was not fearful or desperate as he expected. Instead, she looked almost bored. I am Fleet Admiral Krathzun of the Jothic Empire, he began, his voice formal and commanding. You are in violation of Imperial space. Identify yourself. The human woman tilted her head slightly. Captain Maria Okonkwo of the Terran Republic Space Command vessel Absolute Zero. Actually, Admiral, you are in violation of human space. This system and all surrounding territory has been claimed by Earth and its colonies. The audacity shocked him. You face 3,000 warships with a single vessel and you speak of territory claims? Where is your fleet? Where are your defenses? Captain Okonkwo smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You are looking at our defense, Admiral. I am here to ask you politely to turn your fleet around and leave human space. This is your only warning. Laughter erupted on the bridge again. Even Krathzun could not help but feel amused by the sheer insanity of the statement. You expect me to retreat? From one ship? He leaned forward. Human, I have conquered species with fleets 10 times larger than yours. I have burned worlds that defied the Empire. You have one ship, I have 3,000. Do you understand mathematics? I understand them perfectly, Captain Okonkwo replied, her calm never wavering. Which is why I am giving you this chance to leave. I genuinely hope you take it, Admiral, because if you do not, you are going to lose far more than just ships today. Krathzun's amusement died. The human's confidence was either madness or based on something he was missing. He gestured to his technical staff. Maximum zoom on that vessel. I want every detail analyzed. The image of the Absolute Zero expanded to fill the screen. It was indeed massive up close. The hull was dark gray, covered in strange geometric patterns. There were what looked like weapon ports, hundreds of them dotting the surface. The ship's design was unlike anything they had seen from human space forces before. It looked less like a ship and more like a fortress that someone had taught to fly. Power readings are off the scale, Admiral, the chief engineer suddenly reported, his voice tight with concern. That ship is generating more energy than should be possible for a vessel that size. I do not understand what I am looking at. Could it be a bomb? Someone suggested. A suicide vessel meant to explode when we get close? Scan for explosive materials and unstable reactions, Krathzun ordered. But even as his crew worked, he watched Captain Okonkwo on the screen. She had turned away to speak to someone off camera. He could hear her words faintly. They are not leaving, she said, and she sounded genuinely sad about it. Bring the ship to combat readiness. Spin up the main cannon. Main cannon? Singular? Krathzun felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral, the tactical officer called out urgently, the human ship is powering weapon systems. We are detecting energy buildups across multiple spectrums. Some of these readings do not match any known weapon technology. The Absolute Zero began to glow, not with fire or visible light, but with something that made the sensors scream warnings. Every ship in the fleet suddenly reported the same thing, an overwhelming sense that they were being targeted by something vast and terrible. Admiral, your orders? His second officer asked, and for the first time she sounded uncertain. Krathzun made his decision. They had come too far to turn back based on fear of a single ship, no matter how strange. Send Attack Wing 7 forward. 50 ships. Disable that human vessel and take it intact if possible. I want to know what technology they are using. Orders flashed through the fleet network. 50 warships broke formation and accelerated toward the Absolute Zero. It should have been overwhelming force. 50 against 1. On the screen, Captain Okonkwo turned back to face him. I am sorry it came to this, Admiral. For what it is worth, I wish you had listened. Then she looked at someone off screen and began counting. 5. The glow around the human ship intensified. 4. Krathzun's instruments began to fail, overwhelmed by the energy readings. 3. The attacking wing opened fire, and their weapons struck the human ship's shields. The energy simply vanished, absorbed like water into sand. 2. Something inside the Absolute Zero began to hum. Krathzun could not explain how, but he could hear it through the void of space itself. The space between the two forces shrank with every passing second. The 50 Jothic warships of Attack Wing 7 closed the distance to the human vessel at maximum combat speed. On their displays, the single human ship grew larger and more detailed. It did not move. It did not retreat. It simply waited. Commander Zethral led the attack wing from his destroyer, the Swift Talon. He had fought in 17 major battles for the Empire and destroyed countless enemy vessels. This should have been the easiest mission of his career. One ship, how hard could it be? But something about this felt wrong. The human ship was not maneuvering or attempting to evade. It was not even bringing up what appeared to be defensive shields. Though his sensors said shields were active, it just sat there in space like a mountain that refused to acknowledge the storm coming for it. All ships maintain formation, Zethral commanded over the wing channel. Target weapons and propulsion systems. The Admiral wants this ship captured intact. 50 acknowledgements came back instantly. His people were professionals, the finest warriors the Empire produced. They could handle one primitive human vessel with their eyes closed. Weapons range in 30 seconds, his tactical officer announced. Zethral watched the distance counter drop. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. 5. All ships fire at will. The attack wing unleashed its fury. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles streaked across the void toward the absolute zero. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The first volley struck the human ship's shields and nothing happened. Zethral stared at his display in confusion. Report, what just happened? Sir? The weapons impacted the target's shields, but there is no damage reading. In fact, the tactical officer's voice trailed off in disbelief. Sir, the energy from our weapons appears to have been absorbed by their shield system. It is not deflecting the attacks. It is eating them. That is impossible, Zethral snapped. Fire again.
Full power!
The wing poured more fire into the human ship. Hundreds of weapons discharged simultaneously. It was a light show that should have obliterated anything in its path. The Absolute Zero's shields glowed brighter with each impact, but the ship itself remained completely undamaged. Then something changed. The human ship's bow began to shine with a light that hurt to look at even through filtered displays. Every sensor on every ship in the attack wing suddenly screamed warnings about massive energy buildups. Back on the relentless dawn, Fleet Admiral Krathzun watched in growing horror as his instruments went insane. What am I looking at? He demanded. The chief engineer's hands shook as he tried to interpret the data. Admiral, the power readings from that human ship have increased by 3,000% in the last 10 seconds. The energy concentration at the bow of the vessel is equivalent to a stellar flare. Whatever weapon they are charging, it is drawing power from something we cannot identify. Their reactor should not be able to produce this much energy. Nothing should be able to produce this much energy. On the communication screen, Captain Okonkwo finished her countdown. 1. Fire. The universe split open. A beam of pure white light erupted from the front of the Absolute Zero. It was not like the energy weapons the Jothic used. Those were visible as colored bolts or beams that traveled through space. This was different. This was a lance of concentrated destruction that seemed to exist in all places along its path simultaneously. The first ship in Attack Wing 7, Commander Zethral's Swift Talon, was there one moment. The next moment it was not. It did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to exist. Every atom of the destroyer was converted to energy in a fraction of a second. The beam continued. A second ship vanished. Then a third. Then 10 more. The light carved through the attack wing like a blade through smoke. Ship after ship disappeared into nothingness, leaving no debris, no wreckage, no evidence they had ever existed except for the screams over the communication channels that cut off abruptly as each vessel died. The beam did not stop with the attack wing. It continued through empty space and reached the main body of the fleet. Ships desperately tried to move out of its path, but it was too fast, too accurate. 200 more warships were touched by the light and erased from existence. 3.7 seconds after firing, the beam dissipated. In its wake, 250 Jothic warships were gone. 250 ships crewed by thousands of Jothic warriors and officers, families and friends and futures all gone, vaporized at a subatomic level, and the human ship sat in space completely undamaged, already beginning to charge for another shot. The bridge of the relentless dawn was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. They had all just witnessed something that their minds refused to accept. Krathazun found his voice first.
How many ships did we lose?
The tactical officer had to check his display 3 times before he could answer. 250 confirmed destroyed, Admiral. No survivors detected. No debris detected. They are simply gone. One shot, someone whispered. One shot destroyed 250 ships, and what did they hit us with? Krathazun demanded. What kind of weapon is that? The chief engineer shook his head, his scales pale with shock. I do not know, Admiral. The energy output was equivalent to a small star. The beam appeared to destabilize matter at a fundamental level. It is not a weapon. It is applied physics at a level we did not think possible. Krathazun looked at the tactical display. His perfect fleet formation now had a gap carved through it where hundreds of ships had been moments ago. And the human ship was still there waiting. The glow at its bow was building again. All ships scatter, Krathazun shouted. Break formation and engage from multiple vectors. They cannot target us all if we surround them. The order flashed through the fleet network. 1,500 warships broke away from the main formation and began maneuvering to encircle the absolute zero. It was sound tactical thinking. No single ship could defend against attacks from all directions simultaneously. They would overwhelm the human vessel through sheer numbers. On the communication screen, Captain Okonkwo watched the Jathic fleet maneuver. She turned to someone off-screen. They are trying to surround us, Commander. Execute defensive pattern Theta. Authorization Okonkwo Alpha 7. Acknowledged, Captain, a male voice responded. Activating point defense network. Weapons free. All batteries, you are cleared to engage targets of opportunity. Krathazun saw the human ship change. Panels all over its hull slid open, revealing hundreds of smaller weapons. Turrets emerged and swiveled with smooth precision. Missile tubes opened. What had looked like a single fortress now revealed itself to be a platform, carrying an entire fleet's worth of weapons. Admiral, I am counting over 300 individual weapon systems on that vessel, the tactical officer reported, his voice hollow. Railguns, missile launchers, laser arrays, and weapons we cannot identify. They are all activating. The Jathic ships closed in from all sides, weapons blazing. They came in attack groups, coordinated strikes meant to overwhelm any defense. It should have worked. It did not work. The absolute zero began to rotate slowly, gracefully. As it turned, its weapons opened fire. Every turret tracked independently. Every system operated with perfect efficiency. And every shot found its target. A Jathic cruiser exploded as 3 railgun rounds traveling at 90% of light speed punched through its hull. A squadron of fighters vanished in a cloud of antimatter as a missile detonated in their midst. A battleship's shields collapsed under sustained laser fire that simply did not stop. The human ship was not fighting a battle. It was conducting an execution. Every weapon system operated with cold mechanical precision, prioritizing targets, calculating firing solutions, and destroying anything that came within range. The Jathic crews were brave and skilled, but they were fighting something that did not miss. That did not panic. That did not make mistakes. Ships died by the dozens, then by the hundreds. The space around the absolute zero became a graveyard of shattered hulls and expanding clouds of debris. And still the human ship rotated, its weapons never silent, its shields never failing. Fall back, Krathazun ordered, his voice breaking. All ships, retreat to maximum weapons range and regroup. But the human ship did not let them retreat easily. As the surviving Jathic vessels tried to pull away, the Absolute Zero's main cannon fired again. Another white beam carved through space, and another 50 ships ceased to exist. When the survivors finally reached a safe distance, Krathazun looked at what remained of his fleet. Of the 3,000 ships he had started with, barely 1,800 remained. In less than 10 minutes of combat, he had lost 40% of his force to a single enemy vessel. Damage report on the human ship, he said quietly. The tactical officer checked his sensors. Minimal damage, Admiral. Their shields are at 97%. Hull integrity is 100%. All weapon systems remain operational. They have not even slowed down. Krathazun slumped in his command chair. His perfect fleet, the largest ever assembled, had been defeated by one ship. One ship that was now sitting in space waiting to see what he would do next. On the communication screen, Captain Okonkwo appeared again. Admiral Krathazun, I'm going to give you one more chance. Turn your fleet around and leave this system. Go home. The 1,800 surviving ships of the Jathic Armada formed up for their final assault. Every vessel pushed its engines to maximum power. Every weapon charged to full capacity. If they were going to die, they would die attacking. That was the way of the Empire. That was the way of warriors. Commander Veshkal commanded a heavy cruiser in the third attack wave. She had watched friends and comrades die in the previous engagements. Fear sat in her chest like a stone, but duty kept her hand steady on the controls. The human ship had proven devastatingly effective against coordinated attacks. Perhaps overwhelming force would be different. Perhaps if all of them hit at once, if all of them fired at once, they could bring down that monster. All ships report ready. Fleet Admiral Krathzun's voice came through the command channel. He sounded tired but determined. Today we show these humans what it means to face the full might of the Jathic Empire. If we fall as warriors. For the Empire! For the Empire! 1,800 crews shouted back. Attack! The entire fleet surged forward as one massive wave. They came from all directions, converging on the absolute zero like a closing fist. The human ship sat at the center of the formation, still rotating slowly, its weapons tracking targets with mechanical precision. On the bridge of the absolute zero, Captain Maria Okonkwo stood calmly at the center of controlled chaos. Displays showed the approaching enemy fleet. Threat assessments scrolled past. Firing solutions updated continuously. Her crew worked with the smooth efficiency of people who had trained for exactly this scenario. All enemy ships are accelerating to ramming velocity, her tactical officer reported. They intend to physically crash into us if their weapons fail. Desperation, Okonkwo said quietly. She had hoped to avoid this. She had given the aliens every chance to leave. But some species only learned through pain, and the Jathic were apparently one of them. How long until they reach effective weapons range? 2 minutes at current speed. Plenty of time. She turned to her weapons coordinator. Commander Hayes, execute Protocol Aegis. I want every point defense system online. Nothing gets through to the hull. Yes, Captain. Activating all defensive arrays now. The absolute zero transformed. What had appeared to be smooth hull plates separated to reveal weapons underneath. Hundreds of turrets emerged. Laser clusters popped out from recessed mountings. Missile tubes opened like the eyes of some vast mechanical creature waking from sleep. Within seconds, the ship bristled with so many weapons that it was difficult to see the actual hull beneath them. Threat assessment, Hayes. How many of them will reach us? Commander Hayes studied his tactical display. Numbers scrolled past as the combat computer calculated trajectories, velocities, and probabilities. At current attack pattern, we estimate 230 ships will reach ramming distance if we use only point defense. The rest will be destroyed en route. 230 is 230 too many, Okonkwo replied. Authorization Okonkwo Omega-3. Release safety locks on the main cannon. Prepare spherical discharge pattern. Every officer on the bridge turned to look at her. Spherical discharge was used only in the most desperate circumstances. It was devastatingly effective, but the power drain was enormous. Captain, spherical discharge will drain the main reactor to 15% capacity, the chief engineer warned. We will be vulnerable for at least 30 seconds during reactor recharge. 30 seconds we will not need, Okonkwo said. The fight will be over by then. One way or another. The Jathic fleet entered weapons range. 1,800 ships opened fire simultaneously. The volume of weapons fire was unimaginable. Energy beams by the thousands, missiles by the tens of thousands, kinetic rounds that could be counted in the hundreds of thousands. It was enough firepower to sterilize a planet. All of it focused on one ship. The Absolute Zero's point defense systems activated. Every weapon began firing. Missiles exploded before reaching their targets, detonated by precision laser strikes. Kinetic rounds were intercepted by streams of railgun fire. Energy beams were absorbed by adaptive shields that adjusted their frequency in real time. But there were too many. Even with hundreds of weapons firing constantly, even with targeting computers that never missed, the sheer volume of incoming fire was overwhelming. Some attacks got through. Missiles impacted the shields. Energy beams scorched the outer hull. The ship shuddered under the assault. Shields at 80%, the tactical officer called out. 75%. 70%. Main cannon charged to maximum, Hayes reported. Ready for spherical discharge on your command. Okonkwo watched the tactical display. The enemy ships were 1 minute from ramming distance. Her ship could not sustain this level of fire for much longer. She made her decision. All hands brace for high-energy discharge. Fire. The Absolute Zero's main cannon did not fire a beam this time. Instead, it released all of its stored energy at once in every direction. A sphere of pure destructive force expanded outward from the ship at the speed of light. It was not heat or radiation or plasma. It was something more fundamental. Where the sphere touched matter, that matter ceased to exist. Atoms were torn apart and converted to pure energy. The expanding sphere touched the first wave of Jothic ships. They vanished. Not exploded. Not destroyed. Simply removed from existence. The sphere continued expanding. Second wave gone. Third wave gone. Ships that had been charging forward with weapons blazing simply were not there anymore. In 4 seconds, the sphere expanded to a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. When it dissipated, the only thing left in that entire volume of space was the Absolute Zero itself, protected by its shields that had been specifically designed to withstand the weapon's discharge. Commander Veshikal did not even see her death coming. One moment she was shouting orders to her crew. The next moment she was nowhere at all. The same fate met every other ship in the Jothic fleet. 1,800 warships and everyone aboard them erased in the time it took to draw a single breath. On the bridge of the relentless dawn, Fleet Admiral Krathzun stared at his displays in absolute incomprehension. The tactical screen showed nothing. No ships, no debris, no life signs. Just empty space with a single human vessel floating at the center. His entire fleet was gone. 3,000 ships reduced to one damaged flagship that had only survived because it had been positioned far behind the main assault force. He was alone. His people were dead. His empire's greatest military achievement had lasted less than an hour against a single enemy vessel. Damage report, he croaked, though he already knew the answer. Main weapons offline, his tactical officer reported in a dead voice. Shields at 30%. Multiple hull breaches, propulsion at 40%. We are not combat effective, Admiral. Krathzun looked at the human ship on his screen. Its shields were flickering as they recharged. Some areas of the hull showed damage from the last exchange of fire, but it was still there. Still operational. Still capable of erasing him from existence if it chose to. The communication channel opened without him requesting it. Captain Okonkwo appeared on his screen again. She looked tired now and sad. Admiral Krathzun, I am not going to destroy your ship, she said. You are going to limp home to your empire and deliver a message for me. Krathzun said nothing. What was there to say? He had been utterly defeated. Okonkwo continued. I want you to tell your leaders that Earth is not interested in conquest. We do not want to rule other species or take their worlds. We simply want to be left alone. But we are very, very good at defending ourselves. What you faced today was one ship. One of our older ships. We have others. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. Tell your empire that if they send another fleet, we will send more ships. And we will not stop with just destroying your fleets. We will follow them home. We will make sure that no one ever thinks about threatening humanity again. Do you understand me, Admiral? Krathzun understood perfectly. The humans were not bluffing. They did not need to bluff. They had just demonstrated exactly what they were capable of. I understand, he whispered. Good. You have 1 hour to repair your faster-than-light drive. Then I want you gone from this system. If you are still here after 1 hour, I will finish what I started. Go home, Admiral. Tell them what you saw here. Make sure they understand that humanity is not prey. We are not victims, and we are absolutely not interested in being anyone's 48th conquest. The communication ended. Krathzun sat in his command chair, staring at nothing. Around him, his crew began emergency repairs in silence. No one spoke. No one made eye contact. They were all processing the same horrifying truth. They had met something in the darkness between stars that was far more dangerous than they ever imagined. They had met humanity, and humanity had shown mercy by letting even one of them survive to tell the tale. Get us ready to jump to faster than light, Krathzun ordered. We are going home. Yes, Admiral, his engineer replied. Krathzun looked one last time at the Absolute Zero on his screen. It had begun moving now, repositioning itself between his ship and the blue-green planet of Earth that hung in the distance, a single guardian standing watch over its home. The Jothic had learned something today. They had learned what fear tasted like. They had learned what it meant to be completely and utterly outmatched. The relentless dawn jumped through faster-than-light space. leaving behind the system where an empire's ambitions had died. But the journey home would take days, and in that time, Fleet Admiral Krathzun had much to think about. His bridge was quiet except for the steady hum of the engines and the occasional beep of monitoring systems. His surviving crew moved like ghosts, still in shock from what they had witnessed. Krathzun sat in his command chair and replayed the battle data for the 100th time. Every scan, every sensor reading, every moment of the engagement. He needed to understand what had happened. He needed to explain to the High Command why he was returning alone. Admiral, his chief engineer approached cautiously. I have completed my analysis of the human weapon systems. Tell me, Krathzun said. The engineer brought up holographic displays showing the absolute zero and its capabilities. The ship itself is essentially a weapons platform with engines attached. The main cannon draws power from what I believe is a contained singularity reactor. That explains the massive energy output. As for the point defense systems, they use a combination of directed energy weapons and kinetic systems, all coordinated by artificial intelligence that can track and engage thousands of targets simultaneously. Can we build such things? Krathzun asked. The engineer shook his head slowly. Admiral, even if we understood every detail of their technology, we do not have the industrial capacity or material science to replicate it. The humans have clearly taken a different evolutionary path with their weapons development. While we focused on building many ships with moderate capabilities, they focused on building fewer ships with overwhelming capabilities. It is a fundamental difference in military philosophy. Krathzun nodded slowly. The Empire had always believed that quantity was its own quality. A fleet of 1,000 ships could be in 1,000 places, but the humans had proven that one ship in the right place with the right weapons was worth more than 1,000 ordinary vessels. What are our chances if the Empire decides to attack them again? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. The engineer was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, Admiral, unless we can field a fleet 10 times larger than what we brought today, and spread across such a wide area that even their spherical weapon cannot catch us all at once, I would say our chances are 0. And that assumes they only send one ship again. The human captain said they had more ships like the Absolute Zero. If they send 2 or 3 of them, no fleet we could possibly assemble would make a difference. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The Jothic Empire had built its power on military conquest. For 600 years, no species had been able to stand against them. Now they had found one that could not only stand against them but could swat them aside like insects. How long until we reach home? Krathzun asked. 6 days at current speed, the navigator replied. 6 days to prepare his report. 6 days to find the words to explain the unexplainable. 6 days before he faced the Grand Council and told them that humanity was not like the other species. That humanity was dangerous in ways they had never encountered before. The days passed slowly. The crew worked in silence, still processing their trauma. Several officers approached Krathzun privately asking the same question. Would the Empire believe them? Would the Grand Council accept that a single human ship had destroyed 3,000 Jothic warships? Krathzun had no answer. He could barely believe it himself, and he had been there. When the relentless dawn finally emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Jothic home space, they were immediately surrounded by patrol vessels. The patrols sent standard identification challenges, then stopped transmitting abruptly when they realized what ship had just arrived. Relentless dawn, this is Home Fleet Command. A voice crackled over the communication system. Your fleet was expected to return with over 3,000 vessels. Where are the others? All lost, Krathzun replied simply. I need to speak with the Grand Council immediately. Tell them it is a matter of imperial security. There was a long pause. Admiral, the Grand Council will want to know what happened. They will want to know how an entire fleet could be lost. I know what they will want, Krathzun said, and I will tell them everything. But I will tell them in person, not over an open channel. This information is too important and too dangerous to risk being intercepted. Another pause. Then, understood, Admiral. You are cleared to proceed to the homeworld. The Grand Council has been notified of your arrival. The relentless dawn limped toward the Jothic homeworld, its damaged hull and depleted shields visible to every ship they passed. News of their return spread through the system like wildfire. The greatest military expedition in the Empire's history had returned as a single broken ship. Speculation ran wild. 3 days later, Krathzun stood before the Grand Council in the Chamber of Unity, a massive circular room where the Empire's leaders met to decide policy. 12 council members sat in elevated seats around the chamber looking down at him. Their faces ranged from curious to angry to disbelieving. High Chancellor Mordak spoke first. Fleet Admiral Krathzun, you departed with 3,000 warships to conquer the human homeworld. You return with one damaged vessel, explain. Krathzun straightened his shoulders. He had practiced this speech during the journey home, but now that the moment had arrived, words seemed inadequate. How could he make them understand what he had witnessed? High Chancellor, honored council members, I will be direct. The humans defeated us. One human warship destroyed our entire fleet. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted questions and accusations. Some called him a liar. Others demanded to know if this was some kind of joke. High Chancellor Mordak raised his hand for silence. Admiral, you expect us to believe that one ship destroyed 3,000? That is impossible. You must have encountered their full fleet. I wish that were true, Chancellor, Krathzun replied. It would be easier to accept, but no. We encountered exactly one ship. It was designated the Absolute Zero. I have brought all sensor data, all battle recordings, and testimony from my surviving crew. The evidence is clear and undeniable. He activated a holographic projector that showed the battle. The council members watched in stunned silence as the recording played. They saw the Absolute Zero waiting alone. They saw the first attack wing vanish in the beam of light. They saw the point defense systems destroy hundreds of ships. They saw the final spherical discharge that erased 1,800 vessels in seconds. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Councillor Vacheron, the oldest member of the council, broke the silence. This is not possible. The energy requirements alone, no ship could generate that much power. Yet they did, Krathzun said. Their technology is beyond ours, perhaps beyond anything we have encountered in our expansion across the galaxy. They use what my engineers believe is a contained singularity as a power source. They have weapons that destabilize matter at the atomic level. And according to their captain, the Absolute Zero is one of their older vessels. They have more ships like it, possibly more advanced ones. You spoke to their captain? High Chancellor Mordak asked. Yes, a human female named Maria Okonkwo. She gave us multiple warnings to leave before attacking. When we refused, she showed no hesitation in destroying our fleet. But when the battle was over and we were defeated, she let me live. She sent me home specifically to deliver a message. What message? The Chancellor demanded. Krathzun met his eyes. That humanity is not interested in conquest or territory. They simply want to be left alone. But if we attack them again, they will not stop at defending their territory. They will come after us. They will make an example of us to ensure no other species threatens them. Chancellor, I believe they have the capability to do exactly what they claim. Councillor Treshikal, the military advisor, leaned forward. Admiral, even with their impressive weapons, one ship cannot occupy territory or conquer planets. If we assemble a larger fleet, spread our forces to prevent them from destroying us all at once, then they will send more ships. Krathzun interrupted. And based on what I witnessed, I do not believe we can win even if we send our entire military. The technological gap is too wide. We would be sending our people to die for nothing. The chamber fell silent again. For an empire built on military conquest, this was an existential crisis. They had always been the strongest. They had always been the ones who others feared. Now they had found something that made them feel the fear they had inflicted on so many others. What do you recommend, Admiral? High Chancellor Mordak asked quietly. Krathzun took a deep breath. I recommend we add humanity to the list of species that are never to be approached with hostile intent. I recommend we establish a border and never cross it. I recommend we accept that there are some species in this galaxy that we cannot conquer, and humans are one of them. Most importantly, I recommend we inform our allies and neighboring empires about what happened. If word of this spreads, it will prevent others from making the same mistake we did. You want us to advertise our defeat? Councillor Vacheron asked, shocked. I want to prevent more deaths, Krathzun replied. 3,000 ships are gone. Hundreds of thousands of our people are dead. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Earth, as it was now called in the databases of dozens of spacefaring civilizations. The recordings from the relentless dawn had spread far beyond what the Jothic Grand Council had intended. They had wanted to warn their allies and neighbors. Instead, they had created something else entirely, a A reputation, humanity's reputation. On a space station orbiting a neutral world far from Earth, representatives from 17 different species gathered for what they called the Conclave of Common Security. It was an informal group, not a government or alliance, just concerned parties who met occasionally to discuss threats and share information. Today's topic had been added to the agenda at the last minute, but everyone knew what they were really there to discuss. The humans. Ambassador Kelth of the Vreen Confederacy called the meeting to order. The Vreen were a peaceful species, traders and explorers who had never fired a weapon in anger during their 300-year presence in the galaxy. Kelth was an older individual, her blue-green skin marked with the patterns that indicated wisdom and age among her people. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Kelth began. "I know we are all busy, but recent events have made this meeting necessary. 6 months ago, the Jothic Empire attempted to conquer Earth. What happened next has become the most discussed military engagement in recent galactic history. A holographic display activated, showing the now famous image of the Absolute Zero facing down the Jothic fleet. Every being in the room had seen this image. Many had watched the full battle recording, though most could not watch it all the way through without feeling sick. The question before us today," Kelth continued, "is simple. What do we do about humanity?" Ambassador Torval of the Crimson Empire stood. His species was one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations, with a military tradition spanning millennia. "I fail to see why this is a question. The humans defended their territory from an aggressive invasion. They demonstrated impressive military capacity, yes, but they have shown no signs of expansion or aggression toward any other species. We should do nothing except perhaps establish diplomatic relations." "With respect, Ambassador Torval, I disagree," said Representative Mikkel of the Yorn cluster. The Yorn were insectoid species known for their logical approach to problems. The humans did not simply defend themselves. They demonstrated the capacity to build vessels that can single-handedly destroy fleets. What happens when they build 10 such vessels? 20? 100? What happens when they decide they want more territory? "That is a baseless assumption," Torval replied. "You are judging them for actions they have not taken." "I am preparing for possibilities," Mikkel countered. "That is what responsible governments do." Ambassador Kelth raised her hand for calm. "Both perspectives have merit. However, I believe we are missing something important. We are treating the humans as if they are like us. I have studied their history, what little we can access from their public networks. They are not like us. They do not think like us, and that is what makes them so dangerous." She brought up new displays showing human history, wars, weapons, conflicts that spanned centuries. Humans have been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. They have developed weapons technology at a rate that far exceeds their development in other areas. When they finally left their homeworld and began exploring space, they did not leave their weapons behind. They brought them along and made them bigger. Many species have violent histories, Torval pointed out. Yes, but most species stop fighting once they unite under a single government and begin exploring space. Kelth replied, "Humans never stopped. They simply redirected their focus. Look at their ship designs. Every human vessel, even their civilian ships, have weapons. Their mining ships carry enough firepower to threaten military vessels from other species. Their research stations have defensive systems that could withstand a small fleet. They do not build anything without considering how to defend it or use it as a weapon." The room was quiet as the representatives absorbed this information. "Have a question," said Counselor Treve of the Pathfinders Guild. "Does anyone here have actual diplomatic contact with humanity? Has anyone spoken to them directly?" Heads shook around the room. No one had established formal relations with Earth. The humans had been deemed too young a species, too new to space travel. Most civilizations followed a protocol of waiting at least a century before opening diplomatic channels with newly spacefaring species. It gave new civilizations time to stabilize and mature. "Then perhaps we should start there," Drev suggested. "Send a diplomatic mission. Talk to them, find out what their intentions are. And who will volunteer to approach a species that can vaporize ships with a single weapon?" Mikkel asked. "I will," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Thelnus of the Keepers standing. The Keepers were one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. They maintained the Great Archive, a vast collection of knowledge that species could access freely. If anyone could approach the humans safely, it was them. The Keepers have no military, Thelness continued. We pose no threat to anyone. If humanity is reasonable, they will speak with us. If they are not reasonable, then we need to know that too. Either way, someone needs to make contact before fear and ignorance lead to more violence. Ambassador Kelth nodded slowly. A wise suggestion. Does anyone object to the Keepers attempting diplomatic contact? No one objected. The decision was made. 4 weeks later, the Keeper vessel Eternal Dawn approached the edge of human space. They had broadcast their intentions on all frequencies, identifying themselves as peaceful explorers seeking diplomatic dialogue. They moved slowly, making no aggressive maneuvers, giving the humans plenty of time to observe and analyze their approach. The response came quickly. A human ship appeared on their sensors. It was smaller than the Absolute Zero, but the Keeper's instruments immediately identified it as heavily armed. The humans were taking no chances. Unknown vessel, this is the TRSC Vigilant, a human voice said over the communication channel. You are approaching restricted space. State your intentions. Ambassador Thelness responded personally. I am Ambassador Thelness of the Keepers. We are a peaceful people dedicated to knowledge and understanding. We request permission to meet with representatives of humanity to establish diplomatic relations. There was a long pause. Thelness imagined humans somewhere debating whether to allow the meeting or simply order them to leave. Finally, the response came. Permission granted, Ambassador. You will be escorted to Station Unity, a diplomatic facility in neutral space near our border. Follow our vector and do not deviate. Any deviation will be considered hostile action. Understood. We will comply fully. The human ship guided them to Station Unity, a surprisingly large facility that the humans had apparently built specifically for meeting with other species. The Keepers docked and were greeted by a human diplomatic team led by Ambassador Chen Wei. Chen was a middle-aged human male with gray in his hair and a calm demeanor that reminded Thelness of experienced diplomats from other species. They met in a conference room that was simple but comfortable, designed to accommodate various body types and environmental needs. Ambassador Thelness, welcome to Station Unity, Chen said with what Thelness recognized as a human smile. I apologize for the security protocols, but I am sure you understand why we are cautious. Of course, Thelness replied. The Battle of Earth has become well known throughout the galaxy. Your defensive capabilities are impressive. Chen's smile faded slightly. That battle was regrettable. We gave the Jothic every opportunity to leave peacefully. They chose violence. We simply responded in kind. In kind? Thelness asked carefully. Ambassador Chen, you destroyed 3,000 ships with one vessel. That is not responding in kind. That is responding with overwhelming force. Chen was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Ambassador, may I speak frankly? Please do. Humanity spent thousands of years fighting each other on our homeworld. We fought with stones and sticks, then with bronze and iron, then with gunpowder and explosives, then with nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities. We nearly wiped ourselves out several times. When we finally unified and reached space, we made a decision. We would never be vulnerable again. We would never be at the mercy of another species. So we built ships like the Absolute Zero. To conquer others? Thelness asked. No, Chen said firmly. To ensure no one could conquer us. There is a saying among humans, peace through superior firepower. It means that if you are strong enough, no one will attack you. If no one attacks you, there is peace. That is a very military-focused philosophy, Thelness observed. It is a survival philosophy, Chen corrected. Look, I will be honest with you, Ambassador. Humanity is not interested in ruling other species. We have enough trouble governing ourselves. We do not want to expand into other territories or subjugate anyone. We just want to develop our colonies, advance our technology, and be left alone. But we are not naive. We know there are aggressive species out there. The Jothic proved that. So we prepare. By building warships that can destroy fleets? Thelness asked. By building warships that make sure we never have to use them, Chen replied.